On today's show, the New York Knicks go into Boston and get a big win to move into second place in the Eastern Conference. The LA Clippers, they get a blowout victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we've got 3-point shootout contestants. We'll talk about it all on today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at Locked On Cavs. My partner is Swipa. He covers the Denver Nuggets over at Locked On Nuggets. We are both here to talk about every single NBA game from Sunday, February 8th, right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. This show, of course, is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. If you're watching us right now on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button for us and hit that notification bell and make sure you're subscribed wherever you might be listening to this show. And this edition of Locked On NBA Game Night is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. We've got 4 games in the association, a bit of a light day, but there are some things that happened off of the floor that are worth talking about. We're going to dive into it all, but first, Swipe, I've got to ask you, because it is 5:46 as we record this. The Super Bowl has not yet happened. I need to know who's your pick, and everyone's going to laugh at you if you're wrong when they hear this after the game, or you're going to look like a genius. Who you got winning?
Yeah, I do not care whatsoever what you all think. Again, this is me being completely I'm not being impartial at all. I think that the Patriots shouldn't be in this game. I've said this a long time. I think that if Bo Nix has a healthy ankle, they don't sniff this game. I thought Drake May's been mid so far in the playoffs at best, and bad is the most accurate description. I want the Seahawks to win because I would love for Sam Darnold to have back-to-back 14-point years to completely rewrite what his legacy is, to bounce back from that organization, that dumpster fire over there. Not Jets fans, but the organization, because they absolutely threw him under the bus, went to Kyle Shanahan, rebuilt his career, and then ended up with KOC, with the Minnesota Vikings. They said, hey, we got J.J. McCarthy. We're good, Sam Darnold. Go ahead and do your thing. 3-year deal, $100 million. Sam Darnold goes to the NFC West, outguns the MVP of the league in the NFC Championship, and wins the Super Bowl. I would love to see that. And then Kenneth Walker can take his 4-year career, go into free agency as maybe the most touted free agent offensive weapon in the NFL, make a bag, and then all of a sudden he's playing for another team, winning a championship next year again. So look, this is going to be a great story. Shout out to Boston people. You did make it by the skin of your teeth. We're really by Bo Nix's ankle being depleted and not be available to play in the AFC Championship. So shout out to y'all. I got the Seahawks winning, brother. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout. I do know that they are going to win. What about you, Danny? What do you think?
I've got the Seahawks winning as well. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I'm not super confident in either offense in this game. I think a big game can be tough for offenses, can have some jitters early on. I do think Seattle gets it done. And if that is the case, then it's going to be a bad day for folks in Boston, not only because the Patriots will have lost, but because the Boston Celtics also fell on Sunday afternoon. They were hosts to the New York Knicks. New York gets a 111-89 win over the Celtics on Sunday. This was an abysmal shooting game from the Celtics. They finished 7 of 41. That equates to 17% on 3-pointers. The Knicks had Jose Alvarado make his team debut. Jalen Brunson finished with 31 points on 12 of 21 shooting. A nice win for the Knicks. Both teams are now 34-19, but with the Knicks holding the tiebreaker, they move into second place for the time being in the Eastern Conference.
Look, man, the Knicks are for real. I think this team is really good. They're still my pick to make out of Eastern Conference. They put a work on the Boston Celtics today. And, this is Vooch. We got a chance to see Vooch play a lot of minutes today. He played 23 minutes in this game, and they took advantage of the things that he's not great at, which is in space, getting the ball, just moving around the perimeter, not a lot of rim protection. They just brought it to them the entire game. Man, shout out, by the way, to Mikal Bridges. He had 14 points, made a lot of really good plays in this game, especially defensively. Josh Hart also just getting back from an injury, 19 points and 6 rebounds himself. And then you get a double-double from Karl Anthony Towns. Only he was 3 of 9 from the field, but 11 and 10 today. So they just have like a very loaded roster, man. And again, one of the underrated stories of this playoffs and the rest of the season is going to be the fact that off the bench, they're bringing Mitchell Robinson, who is a starting level center who is a great defensive anchor. And when they bring him into the game, they're able to play a completely different style of basketball, Karl Anthony Towns, while also keeping the rim running aspect of what he does. And on top of that, he's a terrific offensive rebounder. Once again, 2 offensive rebounds for Mitchell Robinson. His defensive tenacity just changes the complexion of the game every time he's on the floor. And today as well, that overwhelming combination of size and athleticism, it just does something to the Knicks, and he just gives them a different level of physicality and effort. And he's just a great player, man. Like, and even just early in the first quarter, he gets a tip in right before the end of the first, and it's just his sheer size and athleticism. And when you have him on the floor with Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby and Mikal, that is going to be a very dangerous weapon they're able to deploy here in a couple of months.
Yeah, and the Celtics did try to get Mitch off the floor at times. Like when they were when the Knicks were in the bonus, the Celtics deployed that we're going to hack Mitch Robinson's strategy and try and put him on the free throw line. At times it worked, at times it didn't. But like for that to work, you have to be playing well offensively too. And that's kind of where it didn't go well for Boston, because Mitch finished 3 of 8 at the line, and he's shooting, I think 37%, like some just unfathomably bad number from the foul stripe so far this year. But it wasn't something that was working because the Knicks were playing as well as they did defensively. Or if you want to say, well, Boston just missed a ton of shots, that is not a sustainable thing. Both things are probably at least a little bit true. That strategy didn't necessarily work for the Celtics. The other guy on the Knicks that I want to give a shout out to that I thought had a really big impact on this game was Mo Diawara. So he played 27 minutes in this game, was 4-4 from the floor, hit both threes that he took. Like, he's not going to be a guy that goes out and takes a ton of shots, not going to be a guy that scores. He was a plus 22. When he was on the floor, I thought he did a fantastic job defending Jaylen Brown. Thought the length that he's able to play with, like, he is somebody that I don't know if he's going to be part of New York's playoff rotation, right? Like, you think about this game, OG Anunoby's not playing in it. Like, where do those minutes come from? How deep can the Knicks go when a playoff rotation gets here ultimately in April and May and maybe June? But he was somebody that, watching this game, like, that guy had such a big impact, even though it doesn't necessarily show up in the box score the way that I think it probably could have.
I think it matters a lot, Danny, that them having an additional wing they can bring off the bench who is a competent defensive player, and he also is a good enough shooter to make teams pay for leaving him open. And the way that he's being guarded right now is, hey, we don't believe that if they have, OG, it's Mikal, it's Brunson, it's Cat, and all these other options, Jordan Clarkson off the bench, obviously Jose Alvarado, who's coming off the bench now, when he's in the game, they're going to treat him as if, like, hey, we're going to trust that if the offense comes down to you, we're going to leave you open and we're not going to send a lot of help. And one of the things you have to have is a player that can make them pay for relying on their defensive scheme of leaving you open or making you the fifth, like the first option for what their offense is doing. And you know who he reminds me of? And I think this is going to be a lot of really hard feelings for Bucks fans. There's a world where he's this year's Grant Williams. And why I say that is Grant Williams in Game 7, out of nowhere, when the Milwaukee Bucks were selling out their defense on Tatum and Brown, they left him wide but open. And Grant Williams is the one that sunk them in that Game 7. He basically just neutralized their defensive principles. And Diawara has the kind of game where he has enough touch, Danny. He's quick enough. He's a good enough ball handler and a good enough shooter to make you pay at all 3 levels. And on top of that, because he's so big, defensively, he still allows them to keep some integrity that they would have when OG Anunoby is out or Mikal is out or Josh Hart isn't in the game. So I'm actually really excited to see how Mike Brown deploys him as the rest of the year goes on. But today especially, he had a tremendous impact on just how the Knicks were able to roll through the Celtics today.
Yeah, and the Knicks now have 2 more games before the All-Star break gets here. They are taking on the Indiana Pacers at home Tuesday, and they travel to Philadelphia for a game that is on ESPN. Should be a fun one on Wednesday as they take on the Sixers to close out their, I guess, first half of the season, even though they've played 50-plus games at this point. As for the Celtics, the one thing that I am curious your perspective on, and you brought him up a little bit earlier in this conversation, but what do you think of the pickup for Nikola Vucevic? Because I feel like that's an easy one for people to be high on. I think I find myself lower on that move for the Celtics than consensus, but I'm curious where you come out.
So I think the important thing to note here is that, you're getting a good player, and you're getting a player who's a good center, and he knows how to play basketball. Obviously, he's a very good veteran. He's done a lot of really good things in the league. But I think what people need to realize is also he is an expiring contract. Like, they're going to be able to say that, look, we're going to go into the summer, go into this offseason. If we don't like what we're getting from him, then fine. We got off Anthony Simons. He's making $21 million a year right now, but he's not guaranteed going forward. And so if it works for them, they can have a starting NBA center who's a good offensive player on a lower amount of money. If they want to use the MLE money, for example, $14, $15 million a year or less, they can do that because now they have the bird rights. But also if it doesn't work, hey, then we're under the tax anyway. Like, the whole point of us shredding down our roster is so we get underneath the second apron, the first apron, and get out of the luxury tax as a whole. So they've already accomplished all their feats while staying hyper competitive. So Danny, if he plays really well through this playoff, there's a world where they do bring him back at a very manageable salary amount, and that actually is just going to help them when they get Jason Tatum back as well. So honestly, this is 4D chess moves by Brad Stevens. This is a great pickup for them.
We talked about what this game meant from a New York perspective. Let's now head on out to John Corrales with Locked On Celtics for Boston's perspective.
The Boston Celtics were their own worst enemies in this loss to the New York Knicks. I'm John Corrales from the Locked On Celtics podcast. On a night where they couldn't really hit anything, they shot 17% from three. It was turnovers, it was missed shots, it was just poor play. They did have the lead down to 5 midway through the third quarter, and then turnovers, missed the three. Fourth quarter, they start to make a little bit of a run. Another turnover, another missed shot. Shots falling halfway down and popping out. I swear, if they got half points for shots that were halfway down and popped out, this would have been a close game. But that's not how it works. And the Celtics got nothing from their supporting cast. Jaylen Brown, Derek White were good, but Peyton Pritchard off the bench, Nemish Queta, Luka Garza, Baylor Shireman, they all combined to score 26 points. That's what Peyton Pritchard has normally done himself off the bench. Meanwhile, the Knicks got good performances from their supporting players. Jose Alvarado came in and really changed the game. Made a lot of great defensive plays, hit some key shots, too much Jalen Brunson. It's one of those nights, I'm sure. Joe Mazzulla will say it was a bad day at the office again, and it was. We'll talk about it on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Just a bad day at the office or anything concerning about?
I wouldn't really trip about anything. I'm sure the Celtics fans were just excited to go watch the Patriots play in the Super Bowl.
You're probably right about that. Well, we've got a couple more games to get to, including another blowout loss. And this one, maybe we didn't necessarily see coming. We'll talk about the Clippers taking down the Minnesota Timberwolves next, right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks makes every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting. It's America's #1 app for sports picks. PrizePicks is simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. You can choose from basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, UFC, and so much more. Plus, they've got features like early payouts and flex play. So you've got options while the games are still happening. Download the app. You'll be surprised how easy it is to get started. Just going to take a couple of minutes and you will have your first lineup built and ready to go. Make lineups around NBA players that you already know, maybe a couple that you're not super familiar with. Just pick more or less on points and assists. And honestly, it can make everything so simple and fun. It's available in all 50 states, so it's easy for just about anyone to jump in. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDON NBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Thank you again for making this edition of Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen. Thank you to those of you everydayers out there that make this your first listen every single day. If that is you, make sure you check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. Get you ad-free access to this show. Plus, you can join a Discord with NBA fans just like yourself. A link is in the show description, either on YouTube or wherever you might be listening to this show if you would like to learn more. And in the Western Conference's game of the day, really the only game involving the Western Conference, the LA Clippers got a 115-96 win in Minnesota over the Timberwolves. Kawhi Leonard was magnificent in this game, Swipa. He had 41 points on 14 of 30 shooting. He continues what has just been an incredible stretch of basketball from him. This was probably the best their offense has looked without James Harden this year, because they have struggled pretty significantly when that's been the case. But I mean, Kawhi, as he's had, I think, a couple of Sundays that we've gotten to talk about this year. He just had a monster game in this one.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard has very quietly in some circles been one of the 6 best players in the world this year. And given that Kawhi Leonard has walked into the season with all the allegations and controversy surrounding him, he's delivering by having his best year since maybe like 2016, 17, 18 before the injury. If you want to say 2019, including the playoffs, that's fine as well. But he's like the best version of a scorer that he's ever been. And I talked about this a little bit not too long ago, but his handle is unreal. He's averaging 28 points a game now, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and he's shooting 49.5% from the field, 38.9 from 3, and 91% from the free throw line. He's been an absolute monster this season. The Clippers are an elite team when he's on the floor this year. He's scoring from everywhere. And today, there is a very, very stark difference between just how dominant and how good he is, as opposed to, I think, another really good player so far this year, but having a little bit of a struggle, is Anthony Edwards, man. Like, the Wolves got outclassed. And this is weird because the Wolves are a very good basketball team, but there's something that's not quite working for them right now. And I think for a lot of us that said, including, again, myself, I was like, man, there's no way that Kawhi Leonard ends up staying with the Clippers after James Harden is gone, Ivica Zubac leaves. But they decided that, hey, we're going to keep building around you. We're going to keep this thing going this year. We're going to try to make the playoffs this season. And we want you to be our hub. And he responds by not having James Harden and going out there with Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., Brooke Lopez, and John Collins, and drops 41 points. And the next closest scorer in this game had 15 points in Yannick, and then they had John Collins as well. This was just an absolute obliteration by the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, he was awesome. And like, I am with trading away Harden for Darius Garland, and we'll see what Garland looks like when he gets healthy. Like, I am a big fan of Darius's game. We will see how he fits in when he's healthy with those toe injuries that have cost him over half of his season so far. But trading away Harden, trading away Zubac, this team obviously does not have the same ceiling this year that it had a week ago. I think that's very fair to say. So wins like this are going to be nice, but ultimately I just don't see that this team is going anywhere this year. Maybe in the future. I do like the moves that they made. But as for Minnesota, like, that to me is the story of this game, because this is a Wolves team that has, I think, some bad vibes around it right now. Rudy Gobert had comments about guys not playing hard the other day. Yeah. Chris Finch kind of went back at him in the media. Like, it is just not good vibes in Minnesota. I want to dive into that, but first I want to hear from Locked On Wolves.
Minnesota Timberwolves lose by 19 points to the Clippers on Sunday afternoon. This was an all-out systems failure for the Timberwolves. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast, and this was ugly. The first half, both ends of the floor were bad. They were only down 12 at halftime, but it was a deficit that was north of 15 for decent chunks of the second quarter. It was the defense, unable to slow down Kawhi Leonard specifically, but giving up 60-plus points in the first half. And then the offense was also, they just missed a lot of threes. The first half was a lot of 3 of 18 shooting from outside the arc, and that was the biggest problem. But the third quarter, the defense continued to be bad, and the offense, the ball movement was no longer there. It was sluggish, it was stagnant, a lot of ISO ball, and of course they continued to miss shots, but it was more the process than anything else. Ant had an inefficient 23 points. Julius Randle had a relatively inefficient 17. And the Wolves had just 59 points at the end of 3 quarters, which is their lowest total through 3 quarters all season. A tough performance for the Wolves and yet another bad loss.
So in this one, like, there were stretches, and to me, like, you can say about, oh, they missed shots, and like, sure, that's true. It's the effort to me that just like jumps off the page. There was a stretch in the third quarter where Minnesota, they were down, I think it was by 18 or maybe it was 20. They go on an 11-0 run and they get it within single digits. They got it down to 7. They were down by 18. They got it down to 7. And you could see on every possession during that stretch, they were locked in defensively. They were forcing a Clippers team that right now is kind of playing without a point guard, right? Like, they don't have that table setting type guy until Darius Garland makes his debut there. And they were just routinely starting to force the Clippers into tough shots. It's like, okay, I can see how this is going to go. They've turned it on. They'll be fine. And then they take their foot off the gas again. And all of a sudden the Clippers are back up by 24. For me, it's so much less about guys missing shots. It's about effort with that team. I seriously wonder if they have just tuned out Chris Finch at this point, man.
So I want to put my best face forward for Wolves fans right now, because I have been watching the team quite a lot. People know I'm a very big Rudy Gobert fan. I'm a very big Anthony Edwards fan. And I know, Chris Finch he was in Denver originally. So, like, I know who Chris Finch is. Tim Connolly, their current GM, he also was in Denver as well. This has been a very close relationship that Minnesota has with Denver in so many different layers.
And they've played a ton.
A lot. 20. They played the most of the NBA, I think, of any two teams in the league, I think, in the last 3 years, something like that. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think if you look at this team, Danny, they are supposed to be a defensively minded team. Obviously, they got Finch, they got Rudy Gobert. They just got Ayo Dosunmu, who made his debut today as well. There's so many different things that are supposed to be true about this team, and physicality is one of them. And they have been playing very soft lately. And I mean that not just from a physical standpoint, but also emotionally, mentally. Now, again, Danny, to be clear, I do think some of this extends to the stuff that's happening off the court in Minnesota. There's been a lot of stuff happening for them coming into the arena. But also on the court, the cohesion hasn't been there. It's been a lot of finger pointing, especially on defensive breakdowns. There is a particular player, by the way, they have been trying to do their best to hide that they absolutely have to play because their offense is not the same as when he is not on the floor. And that's Julius Randle. Julius defensively has been abysmal. And it's not just the fact that he's not traditionally a good defender. It's the effort. It's like the secondary plays, the third rotation that you need to make. And they're doing so much to try to protect him on a possession-by-possession basis that as soon as he lets up his effort, it all kind of goes to crap. And so when Rudy gets on the front of the podium like that, and by the way, Anthony Edwards hasn't been good defensively as well, these two are getting premium minutes on this team, and they're not guarding. And I think Anthony Edwards, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. He's obviously has a crazy offensive load, crazy usage. They don't have a true point guard that he's playing with. There's a lot of stuff affecting him, and I think is affecting his defense subsequently. But I think Rudy was trying to communicate that, like, hey, if we're going to be the team we want to be, there are certain things we have to do and have to do them at a very high level. But guess what? Rudy Gobert, for all the things and all the complaints that people have about him, the Timberwolves, when Rudy Gobert plays, they are like one of the best teams in the NBA. And offensively, he's not great today. The Rudy Gobert minutes weren't good. I want to say they lost the minutes with Rudy Gobert on the floor by 16 points. They lost the minutes with Anthony Edwards by 23 points today. They lost the minutes with Julius Randle today by 14 points. So everybody was getting taken apart. But Danny, I'm telling you, man, I think they pick it up as they get closer to the playoffs because I think Julius will get his energy back. But it's not just Finch, man. They're having issues from a connectivity standpoint, from a communication standpoint, and Bones Highland being a part of this lineup doesn't help either because he's not a good defender. When you think about the Wolves, you typically think they got a bunch of very, very good defenders and very smart players on the floor. Right now, Anthony's not playing any defense. Right now, Julius Randle's not playing any defense. Right now, Naz Reid is not playing defense, but he doesn't play defense, period, anyway. Bones Highland's not playing defense. So it's like the communication's bad, the effort's bad, and you're getting beat to the ball. So Rudy's like, if you're gonna coach and we're gonna hold everybody to the same standard, you need to make sure if they are breaking down our defensive coverages and they're ball hogging on the other end, you need to sit them down. And Finch got mad and said, hey, we got to handle it in-house. But I'm kind of with Rudy. I'm about to win my 5th DPOI this year, so you can say whatever you want. Include me in it. Take me out of the game if you want. But everybody, the effort stinks. And Danny, maybe they just need the All-Star break, and they're lucky it's coming up.
Maybe they do need the All-Star break, but in the last 15 games, the Wolves are 17th in defense. Like if you take every team in the NBA, their last 15 games, Wolves are 17th in defense. Their defensive rating in that time, 114.3. As for Julius Randle, he, among rotation players, has the worst defensive rating on the Wolves in that span. The Wolves have a defensive rating over the last 15 games of 117.3 with Julius Randle on the floor. And I think the thing that might even be more troubling That's only a little bit better than, or only a little bit worse than Anthony Edwards, who's at 116. Like the Wolves, and I realize that like all of this is not equal because of who you're playing with. The Wolves have been a better team defensively with Bones Highland on the floor than either one of their star players on the wings. Like that is a problem that needs to get solved. Maybe it is the All-Star break. Maybe that'll fix it. I don't know what it's going to be, but right now the vibes in Minnesota don't seem very strong whatsoever. We had a couple more games to get to, plus an all-star replacement and the 3-point shootout contestants were named. We'll talk about those guys next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for the events that you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, right? Like how often are you watching international ice hockey? Probably not very frequently, except for once every 4 years. How often you really dialing into the snowboard half pipe? Probably not too often. I know I'm not, except for once every 4 years. Downhill ski, all that stuff, right? It's great. It happens once every 4 years, and you can enjoy it even a little bit better with FanDuel, because following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts, individual events, and finding your angle on the sports that you care about the most, that again only come around every 4 years, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action as you watch it unfold. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com, that is FanDuel.com, or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. FanDuel, play your game. Today's show is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone that's willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. If you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsors Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, I don't know, the location of the job, right? If you're hiring, you want someone who can not just help, you want someone with real experience who can jump right in and make things better. With Indeed, you get specific and target exactly what you need and who you need. Saves you time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit for what you need. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That is Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Thank you again for making this edition of Locked On NBA Game Night your first watch on YouTube. If you are watching right now, please do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us. And on Sunday, the Toronto Raptors moved to 32-22 on the season with a 122-104 win over the tanking Indiana Pacers. Pacers did actually lead this game at halftime before they gave up 44 points in the third quarter to the Raptors, and they fell behind and never were able to recover. For more on this one, let's head on out to our guy, Tony East.
22, Pacers 104 is the final up in Toronto. Tony Easter with Locked On Pacers. Pacers, believe it or not, were ahead at halftime before a miserable second half. Raptors went small to start the third quarter and just dominated, scoring well over 40 points in the third quarter. Scotty Barnes, one of the best quarters I've ever seen a player play as Toronto really took over the game and ran away with it in the second half. Pacers offense has kind of stalled of late. They've lost 4 games in a row. But the story for them this game, unfortunately, is a big injury potentially. We'll see what this actually is. They don't know. Rick Carlisle said post-game they don't know. Testing will be done tomorrow in New York, where they're headed to play the Knicks. But Johnny Furphy, who started, been a revelation for them as a fifth starter kind of player this year, dunks it in the third quarter, lands very awkwardly, immediate pain, holding his right knee down, helped off the court, wheeled back into the tunnels in Toronto. He's been a great rebounder and defender for this Pacers team. We'll have more on that and all this game on Locked On Pacers.
Certainly could be a big loss for the Pacers. The question I wanted to ask, because like, of course the Raptors won this game. They should have won this game. I don't think the Pacers are very interested in winning basketball games right now. With the pick protections for them sending to the Clippers as part of the Ivica Zubac trade. So if that pick falls 1 through 4 or 10 through 30, the Pacers keep the pick. Should they be trying to win games and get to the 10 spot where they then have an 11% chance of moving up, or keep your pick no matter what, or take essentially a 50-50 bet that it lands in the top 4 or they lose it.
Yeah, that's tough. They are going to tank, so they are going to play their odds to get one of the top 4 the top 4 draft picks here. Look, I will say, like, it's so funny that they said 1 through 4 because the 4 prospects that they're in line to get are going to be 4 of the best prospects we've had all at one time in years. So if I'm them, I think I'm absolutely trying to see if I can get that draft pick. Now, the good news is that the odds of them getting out and falling 2 are 50-50. But at the same time, it's kind of like, if you don't feel as strongly about this draft from 5 to 9 or whatever else it basically it is, and you just feel like, hey, that's a rotation player, but that's nobody we're going to absolutely need. But the gamble is we got Ivica Zubac. And if we can add Ivica Zubac to the roster, sit him down for the rest of the year, and also pair Caleb Williams, AJ, or to get number 1, Darren Peterson, obviously, and then Boozer.
Right.
If they can add one of those players to this rotation, they're going to be an absolute nightmare next year. And then if they go to 10, brother, there are so many good guards they can add to this lineup that are available in the draft from 10 to 31, or even if they want to add another center forward. I would suck as much as I can. And I would also just be happy with the fact that we're absolutely getting an absolute monster in Ivica Zubac next year. And I'm going to see if I can try to get one of the top 4 prospects in the draft as well.
I think that is the way to look at things. I think that's what they will do. I think that's what they should do. As for Toronto in this game, Scotty Barnes had 25 points on 12 of 20 shooting, also had 14 boards and 6 assists in the win. RJ Barrett had 20 points on 2 of 5 from deep, 7 of 15 overall. He also had 8 rebounds and 5 assists as the Raptors are in 5th place in the Eastern Conference. In the final game of the night, or I guess afternoon, the Miami Heat get a 132-101 win over the Washington Wizards. Wizards, just like the Pacers, not exactly trying to win basketball games at the moment. This was a close game after the first quarter, and then Miami outscored the Wizards 37-19 to take a big lead into halftime. Anything that stand out to you there?
Nah, great win by the Miami Heat, man.
And then moving on, we did get an all-star replacement as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going to miss next weekend's all-star game because of a core muscle injury, I believe it in. He's been replaced by Houston Rockets center Alperen Şengün. What do you think of that move by Commissioner Adam Silver?
I wonder why Joel Embiid, do you think he just maybe said, I don't want to play? Isn't that why he
I don't know. I don't know, because I actually thought that Şengün would have been 3rd for me amongst international players, because I would have had Embiid. I also would have had Dylan Brooks. Like, Dylan Brooks has had a fantastic season so far this year. I think that with the success the Suns have had, and I realize the Rockets are ahead of the Suns in the standings right now, but with the success the Suns have had, the way they've had it, like, I think Dylan Brooks has meant so much to that team. I would have gone Embiid first.
Rudy Gobert's also been better than Şengün this year. So, like, that's another one.
That's fair too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for Embiid to get into the game. I'll say that. I think that would have been my first injury replacement instead of Alperen Şengün. I think the injury obviously took a lot of the wind out of his sails this year, but I mean, Danny, he's also just not been good. Now, he's very important to his team, but one of the reasons they're struggling because Şengün hasn't been better. But like that's a two-headed monster. Like, the team's not good enough to help Şengün, but Şengün's not good enough to really help the team to the degree that he needs to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was surprised that was the direction they went. Certainly, if I were Commissioner Adam Silver, not what I would have done. And then the final piece of business on today's show, the NBA did announce the 3-point contest field that will take place next Saturday. We've got 8 participants: Devin Booker from the Phoenix Suns, Con Knippel from the Charlotte Hornets, Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers, who has not played in a game so far this year. We'll talk about that in a second. Tyrese Maxey from Philadelphia, Donovan Mitchell from Cleveland, Jamal Murray from Denver, Bobby Portis Jr. from Milwaukee, and Norm Powell from the Miami Heat. I was stunned to see Damian Lillard's name on this list.
Yeah, it's just a PR move for sure. I know that a lot of NBA people are kind of like, well, I've actually played this year and I've been an elite 3-point shooter. Why am I not in this an opportunity to play an All-Star weekend? So I don't know. I'm not going to try to, deliberate about the NBA and what they should have done or whatever. So, shout out to them. They decided they want to bring Dame literally from off the bench with 0 time played this year and have him do a shoot around. So, hopefully it's fun and entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, of the players with like the league leaders for guys taking 4 or more threes per game, the top 4 guys not in this. Like, I just wonder who of that group was, which Jalen Tyson has the number one percentage, Tari Eason, Cam Spencer, Sam Merrill. Then you get to Bobby Portis, who is in this. I just wonder of that group who was called by the NBA, who maybe turned it down. Like there are some guys that would rather say, hey, I'm not an all-star, don't necessarily want to go out to LA for a shooting contest, would rather take some time off and go on vacation over the week that I have to take a little bit of a break. So I guess we will never know exactly what that answer is, but I was interested to see that some of the guys that have been the best so far this year at this aren't necessarily part of it. So it'll be an interesting All-Star weekend next weekend, but we still have a few days of NBA games until that happens. So make sure you keep it locked in right here with us over at Locked On NBA. We've got you covered every single day, talking about every single game. Plus, make sure you check out our daily show, Locked On NBA Daily, that talks about all the bigger picture things going on with the NBA that happens every single afternoon right here on the Locked On NBA channel. So wherever you are watching or listening to the show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll be back a little bit later talking more about the NBA with you right here.
Go Seahawks!